Alright, this is Factor 40, and this is the 4th edition of the Banshee handling articles. Alright, what I'm going to show you first is a method of controlling the noise that a Banshee makes while you're flying it. Right now I'm moving pretty much normally. I'm cornering hard and moving fast and, the usual stuff. There's another way though. Now, if a Banshee is rotating or if it's moving quickly at the same time, it's going to scream, which is the noise you want to avoid. If it's doing only one of those, if it's rotating in place or if it's moving fast but in a straight line, then the only noise it'll make is the kind of low-grade engine rumbling that it's always got. So you see here, I'm flying in a straight line, so I can go as fast as I want. But if I need to turn, I gotta stop and I'll hover. I'll rotate in the facing I want, and then I can move straight again. If I try to turn as I'm moving fast, it'll scream. And it can be a little bit tricky at times like this, and there's a little bit of smudge, so you can turn a little bit, but you'll notice pretty fast that it'll make a lot of noise. Now, this is a technique called a bail and rocket. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I've written about it before, but this is just in case you never really got the idea. One thing to keep in mind here is that spike up right there, going vertical, will give you many seconds more airtime. It's very useful. You see you got like 2 rockets off there and almost a fuel run. Here's an action clip of the same thing, a little bit of practical application. You can see how useful the extra airtime is for the aiming. This is an example of what I call the charge, which is sort of the classic way to start a dogfight. This is kind of an extra simple example, but that's fine. You're going to start out and you're just going to fly toward each other and you're shooting anything you can, all the plasma. You hit a certain point, you're going to put a fuel rod out there. Now what happened? I fire the fuel rod, and I drop to avoid his return fire. That is one of the most effective ways to end a charge. The fuel rod can be before you drop, or after, or even while you drop. Now he comes around, and pretty soon we end up in a circle. And, the circle. Tra-la-la-la. This is sort of the ideal image of the Banshee dogfight. And anybody who's watched a dogfight has probably seen this happen. Most people, it's sort of their mental image of it. It's not somewhere that we want to be usually because it's not useful to us. We don't want to keep circling around here until somebody makes a mistake, while the game's going on and we're not getting kills or not capturing the flag. It's by nature a stalemate. It's a symmetrical situation. We would much rather find a way to unbalance it and end the circle if we have to. Here's one example of that. I'm going to turn into his oncoming circle. I'm going to fire a fuel rod. Meanwhile, I can hover or I can drop. I'll probably hover and then drop. The hovering will hold me there, and the drop will help me escape from any fire he will turn at me, because he'll be facing me just like I'll be facing him. Here's a more complex example. This guy's too smart to be making a normal circle. He's not that predictable. But you can see that we're about to get in one here. Right there. We weren't in a circle, but we were about to start one. He would try to get on my tail, and I'd try to get on his. But I can cut him out of it before we even begin the ritual of it, because I know where he's going in that curve. All I need to do is intercept him. This clip kind of brings together everything I've been talking about. This clip demonstrates something that I want to emphasize, which is the importance of positioning. Right here, we're just kind of all over the place. In this guy, he stops and he hovers in the air. And look where he is. He stops in such a way that I can fly right over him, turn around, and be firing down to his back. In other words, I'm shooting at him and he's not shooting at me, which is sort of the overarching goal of positioning. There's nothing inherently wrong with hovering or stopping, but if you do so, it should be because you're in a position where you are advantageous. You are where you want to be. It should not be because you're in a position where you are at a disadvantage or your enemy can put you at one. Like what I did there. He stopped and I can move myself around him to a place where he was vulnerable and I was not. And then I did hover because I was where I wanted to be and he was not. Let me get into tanks now. This clip shows both one of the proper ways to attack a tank and also one of the ways you can use cover, in this case trees. Now the goal is always to keep the tank in a place where he cannot put his barrel onto you. This can mean you're very, very close to him because the barrel has a certain length. It can mean you are behind him or somewhere where he can't aim. It can mean you're above him and he actually can't incline the turret at you. Usually it's a combination of all those, including shooting plasma at him so he can't turn as easily. The point is, since you'll rarely appear next to the tank you're killing, you're going to have to start by approaching him in a way that keeps you safe. And then once you get right in there, it's your game, because as long as you stay in a safe place, you'll be able to shoot him and he won't be able to shoot you, which, as always, is the goal. Here's an example of a anti-tank battle that didn't go quite so well. I entered pretty well here, but then when I get right to the point where I should be transitioning between my entrance and sitting on him and stomping him, I make some sort of mistake. Now, the question is, where is that mistake and what caused it? Here's a point at which I'd say my fate is sealed. I'm heading toward a point where his barrel is right at me. My goal is to end up on top of him, which is a good place to be, but he was moving, which is exactly the right thing for him to do. So I end up right where I don't want to be. However, I think that I started heading toward my inevitable doom earlier than that. This is that point, more or less. I'm twisting down onto him, and he's moving. So what would have been a way to avoid this? Mainly it would be not to assume that he's going to sit there like a dumbass. A lot of enemies are not very smart and will do that sort of thing, but invariably the way to get yourself in trouble is to assume things about your opponent that you don't know. In the long term, obviously, but also in the short term, like he's going to stand here while I get behind him and shoot him and kill him. Because if you assume that, then you may run into a situation where he goes, no, I'm going to move, so you crash down on the ground and I shoot you. Always. The best techniques are the ones that make no assumption about the behavior of your opponent. The ones that will work no matter what he does. The ones that will work to some degree no matter what you do, no matter what's going on around you. And this is impossible in the extreme, but this is what you're trying to strive for. Something that will just work. It will not rely on X, Y, or Z. You want to limit the factors that can go wrong. In that case, I was relying on something that failed for me. We're going to get off tanks now. What I'm showing you here is a good way to attack a ground target who is heavily armed. Heavily armed means usually rocket launcher, free rod gun, or plasma grenades. What you're not doing is going for a crush, and you're not stopping at any point, because he is very dangerous. He's far more dangerous than you. He can kill you. What you're also not doing is moving straight toward him in a line, because that's more or less just like stopping. What you are doing is moving laterally to him. You're moving in such a way that he has to compensate his shot to hit you. He has to lead it. He has to aim where you will be rather than where you are. And because all of his guns take time to travel, the rocket launcher, a free rod gun, they don't hit you instantly. He probably won't be able to hit you unless you're very predictable and he's a very good shot. Now, of course, you can only shoot directly in front of you in the Banshee. And the trouble there is figuring out how you're going to move laterally to him while shooting toward him, which you'd think was impossible. What you're going to end up doing is something I call drifting, which basically means moving by momentum. You're going to move laterally, then you're going to cut your throttle and aim your shot at him and shoot, but let yourself drift in the direction you were moving. Dropping is a kind of drifting because you're moving laterally and aiming a different direction. It's the same idea. It's easier because gravity is helping you. You don't have to use momentum, but it's the same idea. The point of this is just to be able to keep evading while shooting at him, not just do one or the other. I want to give some examples now of dismount crushes. There are a number of reasons why you might want to dismount as you... I don't know how that guy lived through that rocket. Dismount as you crush someone. One is that it actually provides a shield between you and the opponent. Say he's got a plasma grenade, or he's about to kill you. If you get out of the Banshee, you won't be taking damage from it anymore, and if you keep it between you and the opponent, it will act as a shield. Another reason is that the Banshee actually moves more quickly when you're not in it. It's hard to dodge. Another reason is that if you miss someone, you might be vulnerable for a few seconds, so you might want to get out, and if you happen to have, say, a rocket launcher, just shoot the guy. This is just for fun. Doesn't really have any practical use, but I get asked it enough. It is in fact possible to invert the Banshee, meaning face the belly toward the sky and turn over. If you're moving well and you're moving dynamically, it'll just happen. But if you're not moving that well, you can sort of trick it into happening. This is sort of the easiest way. Either face up or face down, and spin the mouse really hard. I don't know how else to describe it. Good luck with that.